Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. For the next hour or so, we're going to have, first of all, a chat with Paul Harris and Allan Rhode. And as you know, Paul Harris is the co-inventor of the Therify. And shortly after that, Callie's here. And Callie will open up the discussions around the Therify protocols. And then this is an open format. We'd love to hear your questions and anything that you've got on mind, especially around your experiences with the Therify. So look, we thought we'd just start off with a bit of a chat around the technologies. So as you know, the Therify is very, very unique. Paul's brought together three main dynamics into the Therify. So just to begin with, Paul, you know, we do have some folks here who are totally new to the Therify, and you know they've read a little bit of material about it. But it'd be good to hear from the horse's mouth about just the basics to begin with. Yeah, just the basics, and then we're going to actually we're going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit further, right down to an individual cell and what the Therify does for that. But just to begin with, if you could give us this overview of the Therify.
Sure. Yeah. The Theraphi is kind of like the pinnacle of all the various different technologies I've worked on over the years. Uh, from back in the mid 90s, working with pulsed electromagnetic things where we'd make big coils and pulse frequencies into them, to Rife type machines that ran with RF exciting plasma and the plasma components to it. And so the Therify is really like a combination of all these things, as well as all the Tesla stuff as well. So there's been many machines out over the years that don't really use a Tesla coil. Therify was one of the first kind of unique ones that uses a Tesla coil in that manner. And the Tesla coil creates a lot of, this is where we get our longitudinal components from. It creates a large electrostatic field all around it. So the magnetic component comes from the primary coil in the Tesla coil, because it's pulsing a very strong current field that produces a large magnetic field around it. So as the coil is positioned near your body and you're positioned between the two tubes, you're getting the effect from that coil as well. So it makes like a toroidal field around it as well. So you're surrounded by the three different toroidal fields that get generated from the main coil and then each tube. That's the magnetic component from the pulsing primary. Then you have the photonic emission from the tubes itself, and so we know a lot of uses for light and color therapy and light therapy and all that over the years. Life basically lives on light, and everything sees in different wavelengths of light and spectrum and that. So the Therify tubes are designed with a special noble gas combination that makes a unique photonic emission from those tubes. And the body's absorbing those photons. Those photons get absorbed and held within the cells all the way down to DNA. You know, we've shown that DNA is capable of trapping photons inside of it. Then you have the large electrostatic field that your body is basically part of the circuit. When you're in between the two tubes, your body acts like a capacitor. And because you have this dielectric, we call your body is a dielectric of different densities. So you have different densities from bone, solid hard bone, to soft tissue, to your muscles and skin and that. And so you are a non-linear dielectric as part of the circuit of the field. So that allows everything to be absorbed by your body, and the different densities of the tissue in there has a play on the effects of the frequencies. So we get a really wide spectrum of frequencies, and everything gets affected because the electrostatic field is capable of penetrating within the being held within the dielectric. Then that putting a charge on all your cells. So you get a little microcurrent inside of every cell, in your body, and that's what's stimulating the cells. That's improving elimination of waste and uptake of new nutrients and cellular communication. And that's the big one. That's how what every cell is coming about in your body, and you're producing, billions of them all the time. They're continuously replicating, and some are dying off and getting shed out as old waste. In that replication program is where the program sort of gets corrupted. If you get a DNA that has some errors in the code, then it gets replicated. And when that gets really broken down, then you have dysfunctional cells that don't communicate. And it's a lack of communication and a lack of the body's being able to sense where the disease is. And that's why inflammation is a really big thing now. We realize this is the latest thing these days. We've known it for a long time in some circles, but now the sort of modern medical people are catching on that all disease sort of comes out of that inflammation. Inflammation is the precursor to all disease. So reducing that inflammation is a really major part of it as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll just take a couple of steps back for folks who are new. So you've got the two plasma tubes, and you got the Tesla coil, and so what you're saying is there is actually two different spin densities there. One's clockwise, one's counterclockwise, and so you're generating a field that does collapse down to the 0 point, and then you're propagating the longitudinal waves. Now that's a term that we have to also define for folks. People, the thing about the longitudinal waves is it's not fully developed yet. Tesla came along with this technology. So just tell us a little bit about that step.
Yeah, the reason why it's not very well understood is because it's very hard to measure. And, as in science, we basically say, well, if we can't measure it, doesn't exist. And that's been a mistake. And being as facetious as saying, yeah, well, we know everything there is to know about whatever, but that's not the case, because just because you can't measure it or see it or feel it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But the best way to visualize it, it's a method of compression and rarefaction. And the whole universe operates on these principles where, we have to go back to the old idea of the ether, because originally in the understanding of how things worked, and especially in electrical theory, the ether played a big role in things. So you have to look at as everything is a fluid sort of medium, and different densities of harmonic convergence of vibration is what forms matter and everything we see. The whole periodic table can be looked at as different elements of that. So what happens if you picture, the best way to picture a longitudinal wave, which is really sound travels longitudinally, it's compression and rarefaction in the air medium between my vocal cords and your ear. But a good way to physically, kinetically see it is if you took billiard balls and put them on a pool table and lined them all up in a row, and you shoot with your cue ball and you hit the end of those pool balls, that kinetic energy gets transferred all the way through sort of longitudinally. And you don't see the effect. It doesn't appear, you don't see it, but at the end ball will roll off. So that energy was transferred sort of longitudinally, and that's a kind of a good way to visualize that.
Well, it's sort of in the advanced science of it all. It's the concept of the universal longitudinal waves is the way it's connecting everything in the universe. And because it can, multiply and divide, and accelerate, and a controversial term here, going faster than the speed of light. But Tesla always said, well, that's a bit of a joke. The speed of light is our limit to what's going on in the universe. And because it can do that, you've got that, what Einstein called, the spookiness of, non-local, that, you've got that instant, it's not a time lag, it's got that instant, we are one in the spontaneous synchronicity. And it's the longitudinal waves that are actually marrying all of that together. So it is a way of stepping in to an incredible, vast, advanced science, that you've developed here. And that's why, some folks also have some very, very interesting psychological experiences with the Therify, not just physical, but emotional, etc. But look, we won't go down to the experiences yet. Let's just keep with the science. So that was a great introduction. So let's do our little going down the rabbit hole. I'd like to introduce Allan Rhode. Allan's been with us for many, many years, helping us, develop the theories around this, and he's helped me a lot with writing material around the Therify, etc. And also, Allan's got some experience with it. The famous Oberlinski, who passed away a couple of years ago. So, guys, I want to discuss if we've got trillions of cells in our body. I just want to get it down to the one cell and what the Therify is doing for that. Now, we know this term now, like longitudinal. It's the way the cells are actually communicating, and it's the way nutrition is delivered into the, mitochondria, etc. So just give us your vision of what's actually going on with that cell.
Okay. First, Tesla described longitudinal waves as sound waves in the ether. So these are obviously very, since they are very difficult to detect, that means they're very, very low. And there are ways of amplifying those. And Tesla's magnifying transmitter, which is often called the Tesla coil, although there are differences, in different kinds of Tesla coils, that was the one that was really important. On a single cellular level, you have what I call filaments in the cell. There's many, many of them, and they vibrate in this fluid, right? Which has hydrogen bonds in it. This, the toroidal fields coming off of the rotating plasmas, and I guess all plasmas have a rotational component and a magnetic component. On a single cellular level, there are these torsional hydrogen bonds in the water that interact with these structural elements in the cell. And what the importance, perhaps most of all, of the Therify and other pulsed EMF devices is that they bring energy into the cell via these biophotonic channels. And biophotons aren't necessarily particles, right? They're more wave-like structures that are not separate, floating through ether. They are, perhaps all particles, what are called particles today, are simply these perturbations of the ether.
Yeah.
And that's what, if that goes into a whole area of how all this etheric information, which is often equated with the informational component, in other words, the imprints or the essence of, let's say, the materials, the essence of a vitamin or something that's beneficial to the body, as in I can't think of the type of early treatment we had, the word for it, but homeopathy. Okay, so homeopathy is really the etheric information that's still left in trace elements, from the structure of the water is dissipated, and we still have this imprint of information that that has this homeopathic effect. Okay, so that's the kind of level of information we're talking about on a single cellular level. So the rotating fields, I think, of the Therify stimulate these hydrogen bonds in the cell And, as you know, we're mostly water, and anything that's carried via the plasma channel is brought into the body, because the Therify, for instance, emits light waves, visible light waves. You can readily see in their beautiful color, and they are interacting with what have become called biophotons, and that's pretty much the essence of how the Therify is such. Well, there's a lot to the Therify, obviously now, and a lot of the phenomenon associated with plasmas, they are often used in phase conjugation, in four-wave mixing, especially with phase conjugation. And a phase conjugation is a correction theorem for distortion or entropy in the system. So perhaps the most, and the Therify, because it phase conjugates, corrects that, as is well known in nonlinear optical physics.
Okay, because of time, let's hand it over to Paul, just to get that sort of vision of
from where
how does it
went there. Yeah. So when you look at biological processes, and this is one of the things that stumped biologists and biophysicists for a long time, is that you probably heard that it's impossible, if somebody was playing tennis on a tennis court, for the reactions that they need to see the ball coming from their eye and the synapses that it would take if it was a standard electric circuit that went from your eye to your hand to hit that ball with the racket. The electricity in normal electromagnetic way of translating down the line would be too slow for that thing. So if it's really synapses firing with the ion exchange and like an electrical transportation of the electrical energy to go, you couldn't do it. It would be too slow. So the phenomenon of this communication between the cells ties into being able to communicate with these waves that are very fast. And the longitudinal, as you know, like the billiard ball example, it's instantaneous. If you're standing at this end and this ball got hit and you didn't know that ball was there, you'd say, wow, how did that move all of a sudden? But it happens at the same time. So that's how advanced the communication networks are between the cells. And it's all cells, not just nervous cells. And as Al pointed out, those little microtubules also play an important part in it, because those little nanostructures of things are capable of accelerating charge within themselves. So the body at every level is built of all these little charge accelerators that are capable of producing this type of phenomenon of instant communication.
Yeah, I'd like to add that the term master cellular control system was coined, I believe, by Gurvich, right? Yeah. Who came up with biophotons too. But what that means is that since we're talking about the time domain here, and longitudinal waves are inherently superluminal, right? As he was just describing. I'm losing my train of thought here. I'm sorry.
The mitrogenic component, or
what's that?
The mitrogenic component that you're talking about, or going?
Yes. Yeah.
In the time reverse. I mean, there's a new term for the folks who are new to this, the reverse time domain. And this is something that happens with the longitudinal waves because the punt-like action, right? This forward-backwards movement. So when you hear that term time reversal, which is very significant in the Therify approach, that's what we're referring to.
Yeah. And it was Tom Bearden that wrote a lot about that. And you can look at that compression and rarefaction longitudinally in the time domain. And that was the premise that he was getting at when he wrote a lot about the priori machine, and he explained that this is how it's working. So that
Right.
compression and rarefaction can happen not physically, but in time domain. And that's part of the field effect that's happening within the cells as well.
Which brings me back to where I
Okay,
left
that's
off.
right.
The master cellular control system. I got sidetracked. I apologize.
Yeah.
Yeah. The body's different subsystems like organs, the skin, even the entire body regenerates every 4 years, skin every 4 weeks. So how does the body keep up with all these different time frames of mitogenic functioning, which is, don't forget that biophoton and mitogenic radiation is really the emission of energy, for lack of a better word, emission, that happens when cells divide. And obviously they're always doing that by the billions every second. How does the body keep track of this? The master cellular control system is this basically optical communication system that keeps all of this orchestrated and running well, and is basically negentropic, and is totally the healing mechanism that is that makes everything happen seemingly magically. But this master cellular control system perhaps transcends light and everything else.
It's like think of it as an internal antenna as well, that is actually connecting us with our environment, with the cycles of nature, with the pulses of planets, with the embedded in our little solar system into the the ultimate sense of oneness. So it is like a little sensitive antenna going on here. So there was a new term there, folks, there was negentropy. Is, if you've read some of the material around the Therify, we make the statement that you might remember entropy from your when you were 12 years old in your first physics class or your chemistry class, that everything sort of breaks down, right? And that's a story that they told you, and they left it at that. Really naughty people, because they didn't talk about the reverse of that, right? Which is negentropy, which is more associated with the centripetal charges. And of course, that's what the Therify does. It has this collapse field centripetal charges. And then it gets into this time reversal idea. So again, just staying on that idea of just looking at one cell, Paul. So you just started to talk about Bearden, and what they noticed was if you generate these longitudinal waves, this is from the original priori. And by the way, folks, Therify.tech, you can go into the history. We're not going to be talking too much about the history today because we've sort of done that in other videos. And if you want the last 100 years of the history of healing with electromagnetic Tesla orientated technology, you can read about that. But so Thomas Bearden was, they started to analyze the priori effect, which was done in the 70s, magnificent results, kind of clinically proven by the French Science Academy at the time. What happened was that they didn't really understand how they were getting all these results. It wasn't suppressed, so to speak. It was just done out of a lack of imagination and willpower. That what happened was the funding, they had already spent over $15 million. They got phenomenal results. But the universities are always saying to the government, oh yes, do it, do it, do it. And they got to the point where the university guys said, we don't understand what's going on. So they couldn't actually carry on with the funding. And so the terms that we use are things like phase conjugation, which they didn't understand in the 70s, and negentropy, which they didn't really understand. And this, of course, is all brought together brilliantly with Paul, with the way he's brought all these technologies together. So again, Paul, just getting down to the cell, if you could just talk about what Bearden was saying, that basically if you get the right waveform, and this is part of the secret sauce of the Therify. Sure, we've got these 3 technologies coming together, but in actual fact, it's a sort of particular waveform there is the amplifier, and of course there's the sequence of the hydrogen-based frequencies embedded in that. You get the right waveform with time reversal. You can remind the cell how to be a cell. You can remind the cell how to be a healthy cell, which is in Chinese medicine, of course, we call that the Jing of the body, which is your constitutional waveform that holds everything together. And so that's why we are claiming that the Therify has got certain anti-aging qualities to it. So can you just comment on that?
Well, we don't claim it exactly, but it's part of the
it's part of the dialogue.
hypothesis.
I should take that one back, because we don't have 10 scientifically peer-reviewed papers to throw at you.
And that's the problem when people say, well, do you have papers on this? A lot of this stuff is just hard to explain, and that's why pure RE system went nowhere, is because it was just like, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. Well, for them is, if we can't explain how it works, then it doesn't work, even though they see it with their own eyes.
Exactly.
But that has to do with, cellular memory. So let's say in the body, you get a scar and you cut your face or something like that, that scar tissue, the memory of that scar, that injury, gets carried over into the next cells that reproduce. Traditionally, cells will work like that. Cells in your kidney will multiply as kidney cells because they have the memory that they are kidney. They all started as stem cells. They could have been anything when you were born. So they all have a memory of what it is. And when a new cell is created, as it atrophies and goes towards this entropy, as we say, and the cell degrades and things get broken down, it still has a memory of when it was first created. And so when you're creating the time reversal waves and it's compressing and rarefacting time, it jiggles the cell just like the rest of the microcurrents in the body. The cell's getting jiggled, and it goes back, it jiggles it back into time, remembering, oh, okay, I had this here and these components here in the structure of the cell wall. It's not just DNA, it's the whole cell itself. So that's the best way to explain it. That compression and rarefaction in time allows the cell to slip backwards and rebuild, because that's how the body's doing it. And this is what Bearden said. He said, if your body is healing cells and you have scar tissue or whatever, and your body could fully heal, you wouldn't see the scar tissue anyway. You'd erase that memory. And that's another big thing that we see in this type of electromagnetics as well, is being able to erase old patterns and imprint new ones too. So
wonderful. Look, guys, as you said, we're going to discuss the technologies for the first 30 minutes. Now, if you've got some questions around that, please hold them, because we're going to open it up to questions. But now I want to introduce you to Callie. Callie is Paul's partner, and Callie, you could say, is the sort of this is the yin and the yang partnership here. We've got the sort of the masculine technology side of it. And Callie, right from the beginning, sort of brought in this wonderful, more kind of the feminine side of working with the Therify, in the sense of developing the mindset around using this phenomenal technology, in the sense of, we know healing is about an alignment, right? It's about skills and alignment and chemistry and electricity and all of that. So Callie was the first, and I just admired her, the way she just tapped into this straight away. And for instance, Callie was the first to play with the protocols around the experience of the Therify, how to enter into that state of mind, how to relax the body, how to align your thinking, how to ground yourself, and she would take people on this incredible journey, the sort of the in and out of the Therify. So it'd be just great to hear from Callie about, what was your original thinking around the Therify, and how did you start to think about all of that?
I also just want to point out just beforehand, it was also Callie that said, you've probably all seen the earlier pictures where we'd put an elbow between the two tubes and we're like, well, that's where the injury is, and this is our male masculine concept of things. So what it's just to treat the affected area. Callie was the first to say, no, you should be laying on a table and have it at your feet and at your head and do the whole body.
Yeah. That's right.
That's right. That was our first Belgium try.
I remember it well. I don't think I
Yes.
slept. I didn't sleep for 3 days. Remember when we the first experience of the Therify, I did not. We were there in Belgium. We released it at this beautiful spa, and that field. I remember uh, drinking whiskey with Paul at 4 o'clock in the morning. I think, and we just didn't sleep for 3 days. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Callie, yeah.
Yeah. So Roger, back to what you were saying. So how this kind of came about for me is it wasn't that I sat down and thought about it. I mean, I do come from a background of working with clients for many years, both through massage, spiritual based counseling, and emotional release work, all that type of thing. So there is that context that I bring. But how this came about, the protocol was basically in New York when, it was the first longest period of time, 3 days in a row, 10 to 12 hours a day, with myself being the one dealing with New York people that are very high, intense people. So I found.
Callie's referring to one of the Therify releases that we did at my venue in New York, where we put on one of the first Therify events, and
Right.
Paul was giving the lecture, and Callie was working with people would go up to the Therify for kind of like a 3 to 5 minute treatment. So yeah, carry on.
Yeah.
Callie.
So in the course of those 3 days, what it was really tuning into what I would call to spirit, letting spirit guide me. So not everybody's going to be comfortable maybe with hearing that, but that's kind of how the protocol came about. Is that I knew that it was important to get people comfortable very quickly to get out of their mind, because that's what I was seeing in the New York venue, is that when people were showing up, they were so uptight and so ramped up. I had basically 3 minutes to get them into a state of receiving. And that is kind of how it all started. And so yeah, it became one of paying attention and one of touch. And before the field goes on, I make sure that I am connecting with the person through touch, asking permission, of course, first. And as Roger said, going through kind of like a meditative way of helping people get comfortable and let go of wherever they've come from in the day, that when they arrive, whether for a session now or when I was doing it back then, that for me, my approach has not changed in any of those words. I keep checking in with spirit and saying, should I change this? And I keep getting no. It encompasses the basics of everything that's needed for an individual to receive. And when you're working with Therify, it's a field, it's a consciousness that one is working within and offering to those that are showing up. And that's kind of how I approach it, that it's a conscious field. And we are conscious beings, and that is the underlying purpose of what, the very base level of what I hold space for with people, is that they increase their consciousness at a very basic level. That's what I desire for them, and through that is how the brilliance of the divine design of our bodies, it just needs to remember, and that's what that field holds the possibility for. The field is that of full potential and possibility. It's like a pregnancy almost of what one can do within that field. And most time people are showing up because they have health problems, but I mean, there's people that are coming that want to just They want to use it to improve playing music, or they want to meditate better. There's so many purposes and ways of what the field can offer. So yeah, it gets into, when I look at how I go through a session, it's basically inviting people to move out of the head into the heart. And from the heart, connecting to, I always touch from the head to the heart to the dantian, the middle area here, middle ground,
burner, yeah.
the triple burner. And in that, asking them to connect with the original blueprint of design. And then from there, setting their intentions, and imprinting that in their memory at an all cellular level. And then setting their own, their own very short personal intention, and then opening, just being willing to open to receive and let go of anything, that you don't have to work on anything. You just let go, let God, let spirit, whatever that is for each person. And I'm not one that works with timers, because I know that the Therify has timers, and most people do use that because it's efficient. But I muscle test. I use muscle testing. So I work in the sequences of 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. And when I'm doing that, I'm using, this kind of a muscle test, but there's many ways of doing it. And so each time when the person's on the field, or on the table, I test. If it's 12 minutes, then I come back in 12 minutes. I turn off the tubes for 6 to 9, depending on what that tests for. And of course, as we all know, when the tubes are off, you're still in the field. The field isn't as potent, but you are still changing. The field is still there working with you, because it's consciousness. And as you work through the day, that field builds. It gets more potent in wherever, if you have a dedicated room or in your clinic or home, it's affecting everything. It's going everywhere. So it's affecting the practitioners, it's affecting the plants, the animals that are around. Everything is affected. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So yeah, when each time I come back, I'm testing again. It's 3 minutes. Now it's 6 minutes. Now it's, and I may end up being with that person for an hour, or a bit more, depending, or it may be less. Could be that they're only 3 minutes to begin with, because that's all that they are asking for. So it's always a connection with them and their higher self that I'm speaking with.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of, I myself am not running a clinic, just because of the nature of how we are set up here. I'm more involved with the business. But because of my background being more in emotional release work, I always sit afterwards and I hold space for whatever needs to come forth. And then I may do some added energy work and release work. But that's
the interesting thing, that people have developed their own protocols around the Therify. People ask me, what's the protocol? And I always go like, well, you're going to have fun developing this yourself, aren't you? Because, and people bring various, skills into this work, from their background, etc. It would be good to hear from anybody today, if you are running a Theraphi center. It'll be good to hear some of your protocols, if you'd like to share them, or what you found works effectively. We're going to start opening it up to questions. Is there anything else, Callie, that you want to just finish off with before we move on?
No, I just you know, we have we've basically done Therify in an organic way, really allowing for people to kind of, you know, develop whatever it is that works for them. Some people will be very clinical based
Mhm.
because this is their nature and how they are and how maybe they need to be. Others will be, you know, incorporating crystals and all, you know, all different methodologies and ways that people are bringing in. And uh, I know that our Terry out of Kelowna, I can see you sitting there, Terry. Um, like I know with Terry, who I'm closer to, of course, because she's just down the road. Terry's gone and done all this specialized training with Gabor Mate and the vagus nerve and brought these into it because the emotional part and the spiritual is, from my perspective, it's not just the inflammation is the end game of what happens in the physical, but in my terms, the breakdown starts first in the spiritual and the emotional, and then it carries from there. And so
Exactly,
I
yeah.
don't know, Terry, whether you'd want to talk a little bit about some of the Gabor Mate and stuff. I'm impressed with what that allows for, that training.
Yeah, we can
Hi, thanks. Good to see everybody here, and thanks for doing this today, Roger.
yeah.
I trained with Gabor 3 years ago, and now I am pretty much exclusively combining Theraphi sessions previous to a therapy session. So it's setting up the vagus nerve. You're in that less defensive state, and then bring in the work of Gabor Mate, which is trauma-based therapy, and really expanding for a person in a conscious way what is actually happening in the body. A lot of people are coming because they've got health issues, they've got emotional issues. Like Callie said, it's the end result, the end symptomology, but what's preceded that. So Therify helps with, you know, bringing down inflammation, bringing down the defense, and then looking at what actually happened and what we made it mean. What happened in our childhood, how we perceived it, and then the beliefs that we build around that. So using Therify in conjunction with this psychotherapy, there's a very somatic part to this compassion inquiry, Gabor Mate's work. It allows people to get into their bodies. Therify sets that up. You see the breath change, you see the face change, you see everything in the body change. So when they go into therapy, into the psychotherapy, there isn't this resistance. So we're finding that we get further faster, the deepening of the understanding of the body, and there isn't the fallout, because doing this work is deep. There's so much trauma. It's embedded in the tissue, it's embedded in the nervous system and in the immune system, and it allows it to arise in a way that people can connect to and become conscious to it. And then it starts changing the patterns, whether we're talking about addiction, behavioral or chemical, if we're talking about the memory of the disease in the body, the reprogramming of that cellular memory. The two just work beautifully together. And I also work with a musical therapy called Safe and Sound Protocol, that's a direct portal into vagus nerve. And the same thing, I do a very short 15-minute therapy session prior to each listening session. And same thing, the defenses come down, vagus nerve is ready to accept it, and then the filtered music can go in and do what it's supposed to do. So it's a beautiful combination. I would really, if anybody's working with multiple modalities, start with Therify and then move on to the other sessions afterwards, because it just works so incredibly well.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. That's fascinating. Hey, let's just stay with us there, Terry. Look, let's open this up to our wonderful group here. So folks, there's a little reaction button down the bottom of your screen. You can raise your hand, or if you like, you can just spontaneously enter in by unmuting yourself. So we're happy to open this up for you to share your own experiences, to ask questions. So let's go. We've got the first hand raised here. So I'll just unmute you there. Oops. You have to unmute yourself. There you go. Away you go. Yeah, you're on.
Is that me?
That's you.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Roger, for inviting us to this session. We really appreciate it. I want to ask a particular question, and you can tell me I'm crazy if you want to. You won't be the first.
You're okay. We're all crazy around here, my friend. You're in the right crazy group.
I guess I'm in the right place then. I want to read this from the website, and then I'll ask the question. And this, I guess, would be to Paul when I ask it. This scalar potential enables the engineering of the waves to pump the cells of the body with waves from the time domain that can time reverse the cells back to a previous healthy condition. The plasma tubes are arranged so that it produces longitudinal time polarized electromagnetic waves. Here's my crazy question. Does this equipment somehow operate on a quantum level? Do I dare ask that?
Yeah.
Is there some way that time is being manipulated here? That's my question.
Yeah, that's what that meaning is, time polarized electromagnetic wave. So you have a standard electromagnetic wave is in space, and when it's time polarized, that's that compression and rarefaction in time. So time becomes fluid. One of the interesting things about Therify, and this is why I said somebody asked about working with other machines on at the same time, and the way Therify interacts with other machines, I think, is part of this time compression and rarefaction that's happening. And Guy Obolinski did a lot of work on this, and they showed on a large scale time. You have to think on the quantum level because this is all in this quantum domain. That time shift is happening. So the compression and rarefaction isn't happening in space, it's happening in time. So time's speeding up and slowing down, and that's the meaning of that term.
Oh, thank you very much, Paul. Nice to talk to you, really.
Good to talk to you too.
Alex, you got your hand raised. So just unmute yourself there. And
hi, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, it's amazing to be here. I've been following you with all the recordings, and we have recently bought a second Therify device for the Netherlands in Amsterdam. So I work with Jai, whom you probably know.
Hey, yes, indeed. Hi.
Hey, so good to see you. Good to see you in person. In person, in spirit. Hey, maybe first you've asked the question. So, which sequences do centers usually use? So we still play a little bit with the time. So in most cases we use sequences of 8 minutes. 8 minutes of plasma and then 2 minutes break. And we usually give roughly 30 minutes to our clients. So basically three rounds.
Right.
And actually, I was very curious. How many questions am I allowed to ask?
Alex, go for it. Anyway, that's your
People
first
can
question.
put up their hands, and we'll know if there's a lineup. But so far, you're the only one. So
yeah, I have actually a few questions on the science, because I'm also doing a small research for the clients, and what we have seen is that lots of people are talking about the tingling sensations. In some cases, they go into the head. In some cases, they go to the part of the body, to specific part of the body. What I currently see in my mind's eye is that it's where the excessive amount of energy is accumulated, or where there are any dense energy, or the past traumas, connecting it also to the energy wellness group. Sorry, I completely forgot the name. So what is your view on this sensation? Some people feel it as tingling sensations or pulsations or numbness, actually.
Yeah,
what's happening there?
Yeah, it's very common, and where it's really, I've noticed it, and it really amazed me right off the bat. And this is what people talk about, the intelligence of the Therify. They say, well, there's something there that knows that that's where the injury was, right? So if you had a bad tennis elbow or whatever, and even if it's an old injury that you've forgotten about, you've learned to live with it. You can't extend your arm back past this much or something like that. They'll get on the table, and even if they've forgotten about the injury, that tingling will be right in that location. And they'll say, wow, I forgot all about it. I had a bad elbow, and that's where I really felt this, when all tingly, and it felt really strange.
Mhm.
And it's that ability where it's the body's knowledge of where the injury is, and that's where the energy seems to get directed, or sensed. And whether it's the body directing it there or it's sensing it there because that's where the damage and the repair is working, is hard to say. But either way, it's interesting how that effect seems to happen, and that's quite a common thing.
Okay.
So
Maybe-
Alex, Alex, stay with us. I'll just ask Terry. Terry, you run a pretty successful Theraphi center, and you're dealing with quite a few clients. What's your? It'd be good to hear. What's your basic protocol working with clients? You know, is it within? A lot of centers have to work within a half an hour. You know, because back to back clients, or do you work within 45 minutes? What's your general? It'd be good to hear about your general protocol.
It's kind of all over the map.
Okay.
Because we work from home, we are very conscious of, we've got this soul and this body and this person in front of us. So what does this person need? It's not an assembly line.
Yeah.
I too, like Callie, I muscle test to see what is in the best interest of the client. So some people, we start with a low time, maybe 3 minutes on, 21 minutes off. That's where we started when we first got our Therapy, and we've been doing this for 5.5 years now. But we always go to the muscle test. What does this person need? And we tend to do the 3, 6, 9, like those special numbers with Tesla as well. But there's odd times it comes up. It's 4 minutes on and 19 minutes off or something like that. And I don't question it. I just go with whatever the muscle testing shows up. Since the advent of pandemia in our world, we have moved almost exclusively to, in that half hour, the tubes are on twice and off twice. It seems to be that there is a benefit to people. There's so much stress, there's so much tension, there's so much inflammation, there's so much dysregulation that we've gone to that. Recently, with people who have had a lot of Therapy experience, lots of sessions in the tubes, we're actually going up to hour-long sessions, and we might do 4 times on, 4 times off, again with muscle testing to see what is best. And we're getting really good results with the hour-long sessions.
Oh, that's
I've got a client with Parkinson's, and he does an hour a week, all 1 hour at one time. And since we've gone to that, he says, I have very few bad days anymore. His level of health has gone up tremendously with the hour-long sessions. So, the muscle testing is a great tool.
I know from my own experience, when the Therapy first came out, we had it at the Collective in New York, and Indira's with us today. I think she can even comment on if she can hear us. And because of that dynamic, it was quite a busy center. We did get the Therapy used down to a half an hour sessions. So what happened, you'd have 5 minutes of obviously for people who are new to the Therapy, you always had to get them to take off their metal, etc. Cotton clothing is best, and that sort of 5 minutes, you just give them. Sometimes you would have to explain what the Therapy is just briefly, and get them to relax. And we would leave them in the Therapy for 20 minutes. We didn't. To tell you the truth, I've never used the on-off. I've heard a lot of people using that and getting great results. But in New York, we just had them in the field for 20 minutes. And then we had like a 5-10 minutes kind of like
a debrief. Yeah,
debrief, and then out the door. Next.
Call that the
so it does vary. So Paul, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, especially about the off times. Like a lot of people question that, and this really goes back to that time reversal part as well. Uh, a duty cycle is what you call it when it's things are on and then off. And what happens with the time reversal waves is that even after the original signal is stopped, the time reversal wave's still detected. So in the earlier days, we switched on, in Rife type machines, you put a square wave pulse on there. So your signal is fully on and then it's fully off, fully on and fully off. And that's what Tom Pearden talked about with the pump wave in that. Interesting, in those off times, that's when the time reversal component is still measured. So even in a fractal lengthening of the time in the time of your sessions, if you're on for 12 minutes and off for 3 minutes, in that 3 minute period, there's a lot going on in there. It's not just about the operating of the machine in that. There's a field effect that's remaining, and in that time of, it's like compression, it's like these waves themselves, they're compression and rarefaction. So everything in life is pulses. Your heart, your brain waves, it's just waves upon waves upon waves upon waves. So that on and off time with the tubes is part of a wave that you are consciously creating by doing your muscle testing or going through your protocol with a timer. It's part of the fractal compression and rarefaction.
So with all the feedback that you've received, Paul, from various centers around the world, what would you say is your ideal protocol?
Whatever works for the client.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a part of being a therapist. You have to really kind of be in tune somewhat to your client. If you're new to it, the more experience you have, it's kind of like the Therify teaches you. It has a connection with the client and the operator that's there, and it will tune you in and let you know, is what it seems like. That seems to be the experience, and everybody's different, so everybody needs a different protocol. I would say, if anything, don't stick to just, okay, here's your room, you get in there, get on the bed, I hit the button, I've got it set for 6 on, 3 off, and it'll go for half an hour, and then I leave, and that's it. And you do that to everybody. I wouldn't do that. There's got to be a little bit more interaction. I mean, it's going to work.
Okay.
People are going to get results, but they'll get
Sure.
better results if you're tuned into that.
Sure.
The human,
look,
the
oh,
human
carry on.
interaction and touch makes a difference, especially with what we've gone through in the last many years. Connection in all the ways that can look is so very important and critical.
Yeah.
Especially going forward.
Yeah.
And people that are having Theraphi Centers, clinics, you're in a very special, sacred place to be able to offer that. So take advantage of it.
And while we're on that topic of protocol, I'd say there's a couple things that are in the don't do protocol. And speaking of touch, one of them is to touch anybody while the machine is on and while they're in the field. Because there's two different bodies with two completely different souls in the room. The interaction between two of them immediately, if you don't want to have the personal contact while the machine is on. Afterwards and before, fine.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And you also don't want to have two people in the field at the same time. To some extent, it can be done, but you have to realize that you're sort of marrying the souls when you do that. And that's great for therapists and things like that, to see it from objectively in that way. But connected together, there's some of that. So that's one of the protocols. And the other protocol, just for safety's sake, is nobody with a pacemaker because of the electromagnetic interference and things like that. I mean, the new pacemakers they're making these days are supposedly pretty brilliant, and they can go through the terahertz screening at the airport and all that, and the air general waves. But yeah, that's part of the protocol too.
And at the beginning, we weren't too, we were very cautious at the beginning about metal implants, but we've discovered that it's okay. the Therify is not going to
Yeah,
interfere with
inside the
any.
body is
Yeah.
fine because it becomes part of that dielectric, and it's a little bit of a conductor within the dielectric, but that
Yeah.
just adds to the process. Yeah.
Now, Alex, we've got a couple of people with their hands up, but Alex, you know, you said you had one or two questions, so go for it, Alex. We'll take another
Okay.
question from you, and then we'll move on to, for instance, Catherine and Andrew there. But yeah, go for it, Alex.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Well, last question then from my side. I'll pick the sweetest one then. If we speak about the cellular harmonization on the cellular level, if we are talking, you've mentioned about revising the cell aging, connecting it to the natural state of how it was. How does plasma affect either the mitochondrial health, because mitochondria plays quite important role, isn't it, in the overall, in regulating the state, and also in any type of disorder or disease, because as an example, cancer essentially hijacks mitochondria and that makes it go haywire, isn't it?
Yeah,
So what's your view on this?
yeah. Well, it's the mitochondria that's supplying the energy. It's keeping everything alive. We made a deal with mitochondria a long time ago, and cells have evolved to have them within it. Interesting that they're completely different little guys. They have their own genetic makeup, and they're kind of like bacteria, but they produce chemicals like, and it's energy. They're providing the energy to the cell. So as the mitochondria are, and I could describe it like this, as the mitochondria are sort of the batteries to the cells, the Therify is like a battery to the body, a human battery charger, I like to call it. So you can see how they work in synergy, whereas all of a sudden there's a large electrostatic field with all kinds of different currents and frequencies and microcurrents moving. The mitochondria really get stimulated, and they'll multiply and maintain a healthy balance in the cells, and therefore produce more energy to feed the body the energy it needs.
Yeah, good one. Just a reminder to unmute yourself if you're not speaking, folks. So, Catherine, just unmute yourself there, and welcome. Just tell us where you're from first.
Hi, thank you. I'm from New York. I was laughing. My husband and I were laughing when you guys were saying how New York people are so jacked up.
I don't know about that. You know, like I lived there for 15 years, and I travel now between Sydney and New York, and I don't know. They're a special tribe. I don't know if I'd call them totally jacked up, but anyway, let's move on.
That's okay. Yeah. When I leave, and then when I come back, I do notice the energy is pretty, definitely, especially coming through the city if we go upstate.
Sure.
So thank you for welcoming me. This is exciting. And a while back, I probably got invited because a while back I had looked into maybe purchasing a Therify machine. I decided that I couldn't really afford it because I really didn't know what I was doing with it. But I am an energy medicine practitioner. I'm also a school teacher, but I hope to eventually move full-time into the energy medicine. And you answered one of my questions, which was the possibility of being in the field of the Therify at the same time as another person. So you answered that. But my other question is, has anyone, or have you conceived of using sound waves that are, and I'm probably going to mess up the terminology because this is not, I'm not a scientist, but I've been working using biofield tuning, particular forks that are designed to be with the perfect, let's just say they're pure inputs. And I do have a pair that's the Fibonacci pair. And then I have another one called the Sonic Slider, which is it is the yeah, if anyone wants to fill in the word. Anyways, has anyone tried that?
Yeah, absolutely. And not so much with the, I mean, yes, people have used tuning forks with the Therify, not physically touching, but in the room.
In the field.
but the quantify, however, is a completely other story. I mean, there's a lot of work, and the one person that comes to mind that kind of pioneered the work of tuning forks and the quantify is Ron Laplace, and he
Can you say that again, the name?
his name is Ron.
Ron.
Yeah, Laplace, Laplace.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, he's got a whole protocol with tuning forks and uses them with the quantify. And so that's why the quantify, that's why I kind of made it, because, you know, a lot of people said, well, can we change frequencies in the Therify? Therify is set with its protocols, or its frequency protocol basically, but with quantify, it's open to put in whatever you want. So you can use tuning forks. And what's Ron was done, oh, there he is. Hey, Ron, all right. Okay, well, you can hear from the expert himself. Actually, do you want to bring Ron on? And
Sure.
he can help
Ron, do you have a video as well? Great.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Oh,
expert.
Yeah, I kind of lit up when I heard Catherine's question. I'm someone who did have the Therify for a year. And when I first picked up the Therify, I actually saw the prototype for Quantify at Paul's place and waited until that was available. And as soon as it became available, I got the Quantify, because what was important for me in the work I had done previously, which is I've been using tuning forks on the body for 15 years. And in particular, the system or the protocol I developed with a friend, Catherine, was to use the Fibonacci sequence, because it's part of the work I do. I teach a form of meditation called the Merkaba, and the Fibonacci sequence is an important part of the activation of the Merkaba. Anyway, the results are amazing. With the Quantify unit, and I know this is the Therify discussion, so I hadn't planned on actually coming in, but because of your question, the difference that I'm aware of, there are many, but the one most important to me is that with the Quantify, we can take the actual frequencies of whatever sound, or actually any frequency at all, and that can be introduced directly into the field that's being produced by the Quantify tubes and the Tesla coils. That, to me, when I first tried that, I found a huge effect. It amplified the work I was doing with the tuning forks. Subsequent to that, what I've done is to create a sound table so that the whole body is now the frequencies are being induced to the whole body while it's laying on the table. And then I'm doing the work that I was doing previously, which is to activate. This is a lot of information all at once. I'm activating a part of traditional Chinese medicine that is more the esoteric component. I'm working with something called the 8 extraordinary vessels. And I'm activating those vessels directly. Paul said that you shouldn't be touching. Now that's with Therify. Paul, you can say, you know, what you feel about now with Quantify, because yes, I'm touching the body to activate the 8 extraordinary vessels at various frequencies. All of that is happening. And we are going extremely deep with that work. So I'll leave it at that for now, but Catherine, if you want, in the chat, I'll put my email address, and perhaps we can connect and go further if you like.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Catherine, do you have any other questions there?
Do I have more questions?
Yeah.
I actually did have another one. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to I really wanted to ask I'm forgetting your name. I'm so sorry. The lady who spoke to begin with.
Callie. Yeah.
Allie. Okay. All right. Yes. So my question is this, do you use, like you were talking about setting an intention with the person for like what they needed? And so do you use the words, the wording that they come up with, if let's say they have an aha moment about what they need, or, you know, setting an intention for something they're trying to work towards, do you use those words like set them loose into the field and kind of use them as part of the what's being infused into the person's field? And now I'm asking it in a weird way, but
No, no, I follow what you're saying. No, when I'm doing this, it's more in a guided way. So I am asking them to set their intention, and they don't need to be speaking it.
okay.
It's kept to themselves.
Okay.
And, you know, and then the words that I use is, you know, to now let those go and open up to possibility, to what can be created.
Okay.
So I don't set their intention. I just guide it so that they are setting an intention,
Okay.
and that they do that silently. Now, some people may do that, you know, more out in the open, and that's fine too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the part I like about that is that she says, okay, once you have that set, then let it go. So you're not going to lay there and think that over and
Working
over
it.
like a mantra in your head. You want to just let it go, because you've said it. You've created a starting point. This is where we're leaving from. Now you're leaving. So
Yeah.
I like that.
You're
part of it.
relaxing, letting go. And it's also that of trusting the consciousness of the field, because it is a consciousness that you are entering into when
Right.
Therify is on and going, and even, you know, in between, as we spoke of. That field is that of creation and potential. That's what you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
And so at a body, mind, spirit, and emotional level, which I always add that into the discussion also, or the flow of the meditative state, you're affecting all levels. And that's why you will get some people that they physically, like they leave their bodies, they can go astral travel. Others go into very, very deep meditation that normally they would say afterwards would have taken them an hour to get into that state. And I know people that are in the craniosacral field. They say that the Therify, and it matches up to what Terry was saying also. It brings you to that still point very, very quickly, that you just kind of sink down. That's typically what the feedback is. And the other thing I want to add for you is with children is we did have some South Africa where there was a school that had a Therify, and they integrated it into, now this was more of a country setting, where the kids were introduced to the Therify, especially ones that were ADD, ADHD, autistic, and they had very good results with the kids being able to calm down. The kids became, I think they came to call the Therify Rosie. And if they came into school in the morning and they had an upset stomach and weren't feeling good, they'd ask to go on to Rosie for a few minutes, and it became something integrated into, you know, to the school and the program. Very interesting, just planting that thought with you.
Yeah, there's a very similar testimonial from the Florida Theraphi Center.
All right.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, there's been a number of those.
Yeah.
Folks, just to, you know, we'll go on to Andrew, but there's a few questions in the chat window. We'll get to them later. But just so you know, we actually don't comment on any particular ailment or disease with the Therify. it's out of our range to comment on that. We describe it as a general wellness device, right? So Andrew, take it away.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. Roger, hello, and Paul. A few things. Well, first of all, Andrew on here in Houston, Texas. One testimonial / protocol, which leads to a question. This past year, we have just so happened to deal with a lot of individuals with stage 2, some stage 3 cancers. We have done a protocol of 9 minutes on, 9 minutes off, 4 times, 3 times a week, every other day. And it seems that with that so far, I think we've had 8, well, I don't want to use the word cured, but people with stage 2 and stage 3 tumors completely eradicated in 4 to 6, sometimes 8 weeks every time, which is a great success. But my question is, of course, has anyone that has used Therify so far measured an individual's pH or voltage before Therify, in either after a session or over a series of sessions? That would be my question.
Good question.
Because I know, obviously healing is voltage and the numbers and so forth, and there's a few formulas that you can take pH, convert to voltage. I just didn't know if anybody has done that so far.
Not that I know of, but that would be a really good protocol. And you can do that in 2 main ways, even with the simple litmus paper, or if you have a better electronic kind of thing, but you measure the saliva and the urine, and that would be a really good thing. I don't know of anybody offhand that's doing that, but I will put that.
That's my next step is what I want to do, because I'm getting all that together. So I wanted to, for those who want to see the actual numbers, might as well see what we can do for everybody,
Yeah, if you do it, send me your results, and because we keep compiling all the data that people send in and that, and if I get time and it's in the right conditions, I'll do that myself too.
Appreciate it, guys. That's all I got.
We do have a clinic that's just been set up in Arizona, who's got a Therify, and he is going to be setting up a 3 to 4 month protocol testing, clinical testing going on. So we should maybe have some results from that in 4 months. There's various ways of obviously clinically testing the Therify, and it's a big project to take on. Admittedly, we've only just started that process. Are there other, as a matter of interest, Paul, on this subject, what comes up to mind would be some of the key biomarkers, perhaps, that could be clinically measured?
Well, live and dried blood is another one that is fairly common, and that one we've done and seen instant results with. There's a bunch of other tests that you can do, blood tests with, and measure different levels to find your inflammation and find your antibody count and that kind of thing. So the standard blood work that a doctor would be able to do, and I'd imagine there would be some naturopathic clinics that can send for blood work as well. And so doing the blood tests before and after, and usually there was a group in California that's doing that, and what they would do is they would do it at the beginning of their session. So before anybody was exposed to Therify, they did their initial blood tests, and then they ran them for a week or 2, and then they did it again, and then they ran them longer, and they did a 3 sort of samplings of their blood, and they showed quite some good results with the inflammation markers and stress. There was a bunch of stress hormones or something that they were looking at.
And just wanted to add, if anybody was curious, the actual plasma time, if you just count the actual plasma time, on average was 5 hours. So that was spread out over the course of 2 months, and tumors completely gone. Of course, it was all monitored and checked by the doctors, and they had no idea what was going on, but we didn't tell anybody. Just wanted to let y'all know.
That's excellent.
Well, you know, Andrew, we have you compiled that into a testimonial? We are able to actually, as long as we have, you know, like a little disclaimer at the bottom, but we are actually able to publicly say that this is the feedback from a client. And are you able to share any of that with us, or what's the story?
We're still working on all the data. I'm gonna put it all together like in a nice PDF for everybody, and I'll send it to you. Yeah, for sure.
Now, folks, those who are running a Theraphi centers where you are getting regular clients, there is a very, very simple way of actually compiling some basic clinical work. And that is you simply just create a survey. It can be online, it could be on your iPad, where you actually ask your client, you know, how would you describe your pain level between 1 and 10, right? And they might go, you know, it's really painful, and it's like they give it a 7. Then they have a Therify session. And then after that session, how would you describe your pain level now? You know, and who knows, they might give it a 4, right? In actual fact, you're actually starting to collect serious clinical data just by doing that very, very simple activity. And if you were to do that over 3 to 6 months, and you ended up with like 40 to 50 people, and you were able to actually compile that data, there is a lot of not the sort of high-end medical journals where, you know, you have to get everything peer reviewed at least 3 or 4 times, and you know, there's a big lineup to get that. There's a lot of medical journals that would actually publish that work because it's actually very clearly collated. So you can do that with a simple website interface and collect that data. So just to let you know, some of these protocols around testing can be very, very straightforward as well. So
even the pH, something as simple as the pH. That's
and the pH, yeah. Okay, thanks for that, Andrew. Now, Peter, did you have a question before, or is that
Yeah. So I have a question. So a good friend of mine is operating the AO scan, and she has a plasma tube that is manufactured by the same company, and she is of the belief that, and that puts out very, very specific frequencies, and she's of the belief that if she sits in the office with her clients, that it's not the healthiest thing for her because she's getting exposed to these light frequencies of, you know, for very specific purposes. And so what she'll do is she'll leave the office when she puts that plasma tube on, and she'll sit about 20 feet away from the plasma tube. And, you know, she might have the door ajar and talk to the client, which she'll do with me because we're good friends, or she might not. But you know, it's putting out frequencies for very specific purposes, and so she doesn't feel like it's a good idea for her to be near it when it's operating. And so between the Therify and is the Quantify, you know, is there and obviously Kelly and the other young lady, you know, they've had a lot of experience with this. So, you know, do you feel like there are deleterious effects for a therapist to be physically near the Therify or the other device? You know, and Ron probably has a lot of experience with the other device. You know, is there a concern for the therapist around physical proximity to the device over the long term when it's on?
The main thing is, and this is what really sets Therify apart from other plasma devices that are out there, is that, and I know because I built them, you know, since the early days when James Bear first published his book and how to do it, and what all these different plasma devices have been created and based off of. What's happening with Rife type systems is you're targeting viruses, bacteria, or whatever. You're out to, I call it a destructive device. You get a lot of cellular debris in the blood and that, so you're targeting certain things and destroying them. The difference with the Therify is it is a constructive device. It's emanating life-generating frequencies.
It's life-giving.
Instead of taking away. So that's what has the unique ability about other people being able to be in the same field, or not right next to each other, but within not a distance away. And it isn't going to overload your system. So in a lot of the Rife machines, when we would run them, especially with strong pulsing duty cycles and that, you could basically do a lot of internal cleansing and have like a Herxheimer reaction where the cells and everything gets overloaded with the waste that's being from the die-off from the frequencies. So she's not wanting to get exposed to those. And then you stand 20, 30 feet back. It's great for your client because you're specifically targeting those particular ailments in them. So I can see this is why she was saying it. But in the Therify's case, because it doesn't work in that way, it's not working to destroy anything. It's working to build and amplify and create harmonics. And that's why it's based on Dan's frequencies with the harmonics of nature and Planck's length and that.
What about your other device, Paul?
And now the Quantify, it depends on how you run it. And this is part of the issue I had with making an open frequency device, because I don't agree that anybody who really doesn't know what they're doing should just go out and plug in any old frequency generator and just start swacking through frequencies to see what they do, right? Everything has harmonics and everything has a harmonic ratio of whatever frequency. You don't know what you're hitting. And so it's part of the caution with Quantify. But Quantify, because it's not of a high-powered system the way the Therify is, it's a little more forgiving. That's why you can have multiple people in the field. That's why you can touch in the field, and so the way I tell people, you be cautious if you're picking out square waves and you just want to pulse a certain square wave for a certain amount of time. And it's also time length too. To do one thing for a long time is never a good thing, and it's kind of what electromagnetic EMF exposure that people are worried about with cell towers and power distribution, and that it is because it's a constant barrage of the same thing. So the body entrains to that. But when you're working with it, so the Quantified sort of does it in a gentler way, and especially with the plasma tubes, as soon as you translate that power from the electrostatic field from the Tesla coil into plasma, it softens it and it edges it too. But I know a lot of the Rife machines, we didn't want to soften them in the early days. We wanted to have a punching search for the best gases that felt you could feel it when you sat in front of it. You're like, oh yeah, I really feel the wave, right?
Right.
So those kind of devices, yeah, you don't want to overexpose yourself. And if you're working with a client, you might want to step outside the room.
We have a question from Theraphi Sedona. Yosh, good to meet you, Yosh.
Hey, Yosh.
We had many emails from you. So just unmute yourself there, Yosh.
Okay. So I just want to share my protocol. I started my Therapy journey May 2021. So I'm relatively new to this. So my current protocol is I always spend the first 25 to 30 minutes doing the meditation, like in specific Kundalini breath, and then some heart-brain coherent breathing, and then some chakra meditation using Dr. Joe Dispenza's protocol. And some, visualization exercise, and then the muscle test, the variables. For the muscle test, I only use the variable of like 1 cycle or 2 cycle, low, medium, or high for the intensity. And I do the muscle test and ask what will be the best out of that 6 combination for the client. And then I will just set them on the table and ask them to let go. And before that, I would do some cleansing with some sages to cleanse the energy. So that's my current protocol right now. And I also want to reach out to Ron Laplace, because I'm really interested what he's doing, because I am a student of Qigong, and also I'm from Hong Kong myself originally. So I'm really interested in how he activated the extraordinary meridian using sound. For me, it's very very interesting because it's really, in terms of the Chinese medicine, it's really difficult to get those 8 channel activated actually. So I would want to reach out to him, and yeah, that's about it from my end. Thank you. Thank you.
Yosh, Ron did put his email in the chat window. Did you see it there?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
just go
okay.
back. I'll see if I can just quickly redo it from. Yes, I know what you mean about the 8 core, 8 extra. My background is also in Chinese medicine. In fact, I focused more on the metaphysics of acupuncture and how the vibrational world becomes the visible world, and of course the 8 core meridians are associated with the 8 trigrams, which goes on to create, the I Ching, etc. And out of those 8 extra channels, that's how it's feeding in heaven and earth, and feeds into the 12 meridians, etc. So yeah, I think the Therify would be brilliant to be going deep into those 8 extra channels and feeding the aura that way, but obviously more work would have to be done there. So how are we going with our
I'd like to say,
yeah.
Jos, so you were mentioning that you adjusted the intensity. Do you adjust that tuning knob to bring the lights up and down for different portions of your session as well?
Yes, so basically I just define it as high, medium and low.
Yeah.
So only like 3 variable for the intensity, and then 2 variable, just 1 cycle or 2 cycles. And then I define 1 cycle as like 9 minutes on and 16 minutes off. So that's I just do 6 muscle tests, and then just design on what will be the best for the client, at that particular moment in time. That's all what I do for the muscle test.
I like that, and I think a lot of people don't realize that is, you could incorporate that. So by adjusting the knob on the left that says tuning, that'll bring the coils in and out of resonance, and what happens is the bulbs will get very brighter around the center point. That would be your maximum intensity, but you can go both to the left and both to the right to lower the intensity. And everybody thinks that, oh, it's got to be on the max, it's got to be on full blast all the time. It's kind of a Western mindset kind of thing, but varying that intensity is very good, and it also varies the electrostatic field and the way the coils are working with each other in there too. So I like that. I like that part of it.
Would
So
you
it might
start
be
with
good idea for
low
people
intensity first, Paul? Would you start with low
well, I
intensity,
don't
build it
know
up, and then?
yeah, I don't know. We also was starting with high. I mean, it's up to you to experiment and get your results and find a protocol that works for you. But that's a great thing that people can add in to the functionality of their protocol.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, folks. So your chance to ask any questions. So everybody, there's a few things in the chat window here that I haven't had a chance to look at. Anyone have the contact info for the clinic in Arizona? I think he's still setting up that clinic. I'll get him to, I'll post it up. We have a locations page on therify.tech. There's a locations page, and when he's got it all together, I'll be putting that up. He's just currently setting up that whole clinic in Arizona. Any particular questions in the chat window? Perhaps it's your you're better off just making yourself live and asking your question. Any further questions before we finish today?
In between here, I can see that Wyatt's online here, and maybe Wyatt would like to introduce himself because he's really good at answering questions too, and he's kind of
that would be great.
Customer support and everything Therify here at the shop. Maybe
I'm
Wyatt
just trying to find him. Where are you, Wyatt?
Yeah, I'm way down there.
There you are, hiding away there.
All right.
Welcome.
Well, hi, I'm Wyatt. I work with Paul on Therify, and generally when you guys email in for information, I'm the guy you're speaking to. I mean, I don't really have a hell of a lot more to say right now, but
Well,
I've
no,
got a
that's great.
question.
You know, like often I get questions and I have to forward them to Wyatt to, you know, fine tune the questions. So that's
I've got
great.
a question,
Yep.
yeah.
and it's is there any difference between a new tube? So if you're replacing your tubes, if you get a brand new set or a refilled set, is there any difference in the life of the tube difference between brand new or refill?
Actually, yeah. Well, we've seen a little bit more longevity out of the refill tubes, to be honest. I don't know if that's just due to the gas refill system, but we seem to get a little bit more longevity out of the refill. So your second set is generally a little bit more, yeah, longer.
Awesome, thank you.
So
Hey,
generally the Therify, there is a question there about how long the tubes last.
yeah.
Generally, it's like 5 to 7 years. What's your comment on that, Paul?
It varies, and then that varies with use, and there's several factors in it. There's heat, however long how hot you run your tubes. Let's say you lived in Arizona and you didn't have much air conditioning. You might use up the tubes, the gas in the tubes more. It's a bit of a heat phenomenon. So anything you can do to help cool. Some people use the zippy fans on the end of the tube to kind of circulate some air around there. And then the other thing is like not every tube. It's such a random thing. Some tubes have lasted for many years, and some will degrade quicker. What happens is the gases in the tube. The way to know, like your tubes are very effective as long as they're lighting. They're creating the field. They will change in color from the time you get them. Will be probably the most colorful time, but they will shift in colors over time. If the gases turn white in the tubes itself, that's about when the time is to get them refilled. But up until that point, you know, a lot of people say, well, they aren't as blue as they were at the beginning, or aren't as pink or that. But as long as they're lighting up, they're still effective. You kind of know when they're degraded and will need refilling around the time when the gases really lose their color and turn white. Now, what's happening there? And that's a really good question that not too many people are able to answer. I've gone back through, you know, the different textbooks on vacuum tube technology, and it's a phenomenon that they noticed in the early days with Sir William Crookes and Tesla and all these guys that work with tubes. And those noble gases are noble gases because they're not supposed to interact with anything and they're not supposed to change. But somehow the Therify and the nature of the circuit has the capability of transforming those gases. And unfortunately, when they get to that stage, then you have to recharge the tubes. But like Wyatt was saying, we find on the second charge, if your tubes have gone to that stage, then you get a little more life on the second go round. Probably because the glass and everything is conditioned. The molecules, like glass, is really liquid in a solid state. It's like kind of like ice at a room temperature. So it's formidable, and the glass can move, and things can be in the glass. Also, impurities will affect it. We use a really pure borosilicate glass, but whether it's impurities that come out of the glass or something is still up in the air. It's a real mystery. I've been trying to be able to crack one of the tubes that have the gases changed in it and to analyze that gas to find out, is it a change in the atoms itself of the noble gas, right? Is there a transmutation?
Whoa, that would be interesting.
I mean, these things have a specific color and a specific wavelength. They're not supposed to have different colors, so they do cycle through. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that's happening that hopefully we'll understand one day. But I know in history up till now, it's not a very well understood thing of why those noble gases and how they can change. I mean, for years they were just, it was impossible. It was set in science that they cannot form any other compounds. They won't mix with anything else on the periodic table. those rules have been broken in the last few years. A lot of really advanced science has been able to make compounds with noble gases and stuff like that. So stay tuned. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah. Well, folks, we're coming pretty close to the end of our session today. There's a couple of questions there in the chat. For instance, Marie from Brisbane. Hi, Marie. Hi, guys. Good morning. Is there any clinic in Brisbane? There is. I'll put this in there up on the website therify.tech. There is a locations page, and there is a centre in Lismore, and there is a centre in Brisbane, and there's also a centre in Perth, by the way. So you should find that in the locations page on therify.tech. And of course, if you've got any questions about purchasing the Therify, I've got the email in there, info@therify.tech. The website does have some good resources there, so some videos up there. There's, you know, the history, as I mentioned before, and how it works, etc. And I'd just like to remind you, a word from your sponsor, the Therify is something that we work with with the Academy Healing Nutrition. You know, we've got this 120 plus club. So for nearly 40 years, I've been teaching Taoist Tonic Medicine and the longevity diet. And it's probably one of the most longest established curriculums on healing nutrition. We were way ahead of the game. You know, even 40 years ago, I was saying, how ridiculous is this low-fat diet? You know, when you know Chinese medicine, that you need high-quality fats to build up the deep jing of the body and so forth. So only now that people are starting to wake up to a lot of things that we were saying 40 years ago, and we've been teaching that. When I say we've got this great group of teachers. There's about 4 other teachers involved with the program. It's starting in October, the second weekend of October. There's 10 modules spaced over 10 months, and you've got a really great supportive mentoring team, total integration of what we call natural healing, the energetics, and also practical cooking. What I discovered was you can talk about diet, and for pretty much 99.9% of the people, it goes in one ear and out the other, unless they actually get down to that skill set of actually, you know, the art of cooking and new ideas, new ingredients, how to use sea vegetables, how to use some of these superfoods, and to understand the deep energetics involved, right? So that's academyhealingnutrition.com. And in fact, Marie, you just did that program, didn't you, Marie? Are you there?
Hi, yes, Roger. Hi, I've got Jeff here as well.
Hi, Jeff.
There you go.
Yeah, we only just finished a few months ago, and it was a full-on course for both of us because we both did it separately. And plus, I also did your feng shui course at the same time. So I was full-time study for at least 18 months. And we have just learnt so much, and we're building our business around both the environment, which is all about the feng shui, and the healing nutrition, which is, you know, obviously the ARM course. And yeah, our issue is just trying to get Australians to catch up
wake up and catch up like the rest of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I would thoroughly recommend it to anyone.
Thank you for that. And we also have the website Breakthrough Technology. Some of you might have come in from that, where there's a bit of a smorgasbord of technologies that we're involved with. And we do put on conferences. So yes, the last couple of years that's been on suspension, on hold mode, like everything else. But Paul, Callie, and I are starting to talk about a possible conference next year. And we'll keep you informed with that. So there was a question about newsletters and database. If you email me again on info@therify.tech, I'll be able to add you to the newsletter. It's the only way that you're going to be informed about these sessions that we can have together and events happening around the world, etc. So do join up on the database there. So final comments from Paul and Callie and from anybody else?
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for all your support and everything over the years. I mean, that's for us, that's amazing. I mean, just to have people all over the world and hearing the results that they're getting with the Therify, that's what makes us go. So we're here for you. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks, guys. This has been fun, and I think it's been very informative for a lot of people. You know, we brought a lot of aspects together: the technology, the protocol, feedback from people running Theraphi Centers. Fantastic. So I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in, and stay tuned in.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
for
guys.
organizing, Roger.
Yeah.
We'll
Thank
see you
you.
soon. Okay, thanks, guys. Bye for now.
Bye bye.